Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us again tonight. Pharmacies may look harmless, but after midnight, some of them come alive with things that don't belong. If you enjoy true horror that creeps in slowly, don't forget to subscribe to keep these stories coming. And remember to keep the lights low and your mind open. You're watching Sleep Horror Stories. My name is Daniel, and a few years ago, I worked a night shift at a 24-hour pharmacy downtown. I was 24 back then, fresh out of college, and I needed the job to get on my feet. I've always been a pretty calm guy, logical, not superstitious at all, always trying to find a rational explanation for everything. So, when they offered me the night shift, I honestly didn't think twice. The pay was decent, and the work was simple enough. The only downside? Not many co-workers, just me and the security guard. My first night, I showed up early to get a tour, sign some papers, and meet the day manager. The place was bigger than I'd expected. There were 2 entrances, a wide customer area, a section for control meds, another for general products, and a long hallway in the back that led to the main storage room. There was also a tiny break room with an old couch, a microwave, and a TV that only worked half the time. The night guard was a man named Mr. Howard, probably in his early 60s. One of those old school workers who's seen it all and talks just enough. I greeted him politely, and we sat down for a coffee before the shift officially began. That's when he gave me a warning that, at the time, I thought was some weird joke. One of those things people say to freak out the new guy. He stared at his cup and said, "If you ever hear someone calling your name from the storage room, don't answer." He continued, "If you hear your name coming from that hallway, just ignore it." I chuckled, thinking he was trying to break the ice with a spooky story. But then he looked up, dead serious. "Don't respond," he said, "even if it sounds like me calling you. Even if the voice is familiar, don't go." I didn't really know how to respond, so I just nodded and went along with it. A few minutes later, we got started with the routine. The first few nights were easy. We'd get maybe 1 or 2 customers every couple of hours, usually looking for something for fever, insomnia, or a minor emergency. The rest of the time, I spent organizing shelves, checking expiration dates, or helping with inventory. Everything felt normal, until about a weekend. It was just past 3 a.m. The place was completely empty, and Mr. Howard was outside, making one of his regular rounds. I was unpacking some new boxes when I clearly heard it. "Daniel." It wasn't a whisper. It wasn't a shout. It was weird, urgent, but calm. Like someone needed my attention without raising their voice. I turned around immediately. The hallway was empty. The storage door was shut. I stepped forward a few feet, but didn't see anything strange. Maybe it was Mr. Howard? But it seemed unlikely he came in through the back without me hearing him. I walked up to the storage room, opened the door, nothing but boxes and shelves. That same dim light we always left on was flickering overhead. I didn't go inside. I just closed the door and went back to the counter. Didn't say a word. The next night, it happened again. This time I was in the break room, finishing a coffee when I heard it. "Daniel." Clearer. Closer. Like it was just on the other side of the door. I froze. Then I remembered Mr. Howard's words. I didn't move. I stayed completely still. Then came a sudden thump, like something had fallen inside the storage room. The instinct was to go check it out, but part of me felt rooted in place. I took a deep breath, grabbed the flashlight, and slowly walked down the hallway. When I reached the door, something felt off. My chest tightened. I opened it carefully and stepped inside. Checked the shelves, the boxes. Nothing. No one. Nothing had fallen. I walked a few more steps in, and that's when I felt it, like someone brushed past me from behind. The air turned cold. I had to fight the urge to turn around. I stood there, heart pounding, until I heard something else. A murmur. I couldn't make out the words, but it was clear, right next to me. That night, I didn't say anything to Mr. Howard, but the next night, he looked at me and said I looked pale. I hesitated, but finally told him what I'd heard. He wasn't surprised. He told me he'd worked there over 20 years, and whatever that thing was. It had been there even longer. "It's not dangerous," he said, "as long as you don't let it in. All it wants is someone to respond." "It called me for years," he said. "I never answered. That's why I'm still here." My name is Corinna Mitchell. I'm 36 years old, and I work as a security guard at a pharmacy branch just outside of Denver, Colorado. I've been doing private security for a while, but recently I've been assigned specifically to the night shift, which is usually quiet. But as many say, it's also the time when the strangest things tend to happen. Things you just can't explain. One night, something happened that left me with more questions than answers. And to this day, I still don't know how to make sense of it. That shift started like any other. Another typical night from 11 p.m. to sunrise. Usually there are 3 night staffers working alongside me, but that night there were only 2. A clerk at the counter and 1 pharmacy tech. We had dinner around 1 a.m., just like always. Calm, relaxed, each of us doing our own thing. The pharmacy closes its doors to customers at midnight, so after that, the atmosphere is always low-key. Occasionally, someone shows up with an emergency, but that night everything seemed fine. Then, just past 2 a.m., it started. I was scrolling through the security camera feeds on my phone when we suddenly heard the main automatic door slide open, which made no sense. They lock automatically at midnight. We all looked up, confused. One of the motion sensors at the front started blinking like someone had come in. At first, we figured it was a glitch, maybe a homeless man we'd seen a few times. But when I stepped outside, the street was completely empty. No people, no wind, not even cars driving by. Just a strange silence. The kind of silence you don't even expect at 2 a.m. I went back inside, and we all tried to shrug it off. But deep down, we were already feeling uneasy. Then, without hearing the doors open again, we suddenly noticed an old woman standing at the entrance, inside. She was just there, staring straight at us. We never saw her walk in. We didn't hear a thing. She didn't move, didn't speak, just stared as if waiting for something. I approached her and asked if she was okay or needed help. She didn't answer. She just turned slightly and walked straight toward my coworker at the counter. That's when it started to feel really off. Without looking at me or the tech behind the counter, she stood right in front of my coworker and asked, in a tone that's hard to describe, if she could help her call a cab. She said she needed to get home, that she wasn't feeling well, and that she already knew the address. What shook us was that she gave an exact address, and it was only 2 blocks away from where my coworker lived. That's when her face turned pale. She had never seen this woman before. She tried to tell her she didn't have any apps installed to call a cab, but the woman wouldn't give up. Her face grew tense, stern, but emotionless. She didn't yell, didn't beg, but her eyes. It was like something else was forcing her to repeat herself. "You know where I live. Call me a cab." She wasn't confused, wasn't lost, and she definitely didn't look fragile. Her presence was commanding, and not in a good way. My coworker was frozen, completely speechless. I stepped forward to intervene, but before I could say anything, the woman turned, walked out through the doors, and left like nothing had happened. What was strange this time is that the doors didn't make a sound. They just opened. Within a minute, we ran outside to find her. We couldn't just let her go. Not after what we'd seen. Maybe she was sick. Maybe she really needed help. We just wanted to make sure she was okay. But there was no one outside. We checked both sides of the street. I even looked down to the next block. Nothing. For someone her age, there was no way she could have disappeared like that. Not that fast. Not at that hour. The streets were completely empty. No pedestrians. No traffic. We walked back in silence, all of us shaken. It felt like we'd witnessed something that simply didn't belong in this world. That night, none of us slept. We stayed huddled around the front counter, just waiting for the sun to rise. We didn't talk much about it, but a single glance between us was enough to say it all. Something was wrong. Something didn't add up. Over the next few days, things seemed to return to normal. But we had all been marked by what we'd seen. And then it got weirder. For a full week after that, the doors started opening by themselves again, always around the same hour. The cameras never showed anyone entering, but the sensors kept detecting movement. We never saw the old woman again, but the feeling that she could come back at any moment never went away. We asked around the neighborhood, describe her appearance, her voice, her age. But no one knew her. That address she gave, it was real, but the house was empty. The neighbors said it used to belong to an elderly woman who had died years ago, lived alone, no children. My coworker never took another night shift after that. I'm still here. But there are nights where I feel the same kind of unease as that one morning. And I've started to believe that maybe, just maybe, she didn't come looking for help. Not with the way she spoke, not with that look in her eyes. I don't think she had good intentions.